Okay, call to order Merit Council meeting, June 14th, 15th, sorry, 10th. And just want to land acknowledgement. We would like to begin this meeting by acknowledging that we are gathered on the traditional and ancestral unceded territories of the Nkla Kapla and Silk people. And any late items? No. Public input? Adoption of minutes, regular council meeting minutes be adopted for May 27th, 2025. Do we have any movers? Councillor Baxter, Councillor Olgun, any omissions, any errors? No? Okay. Movers or sorry, all in favor? Okay, general matters, delegations and recognitions, 5.1, Merit Emergency Service Registry, Minnie Tang to present. Yeah, just move that up and press that button.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay.
All good.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Minnie. I am a public health resident physician working with BC Centre for Disease Control, and I'm here to talk about the Emergency Service Registry pilot in Merit. And before we begin, I'd like to again acknowledge that this work was done on the traditional unceded territory of the Nkla and the Sauk Nations. Oh, thank you. So background for the project, as many of you probably know because you live here, Merit, I think these are kind of, pictures. So this is during the 2021 wildfire event in the summertime, followed by, in November, the atmospheric flood that led to the evacuation of Merit. As some of you might recall, if you were living here at the time. And this is a picture I took, I think 2 years ago when I first came here to do the field work. You can see how the riverbank really was just bulldozed into a new path from the flood. And that's Karen. She's a co-op student. The pilot project is an initiative from the BC Ministry of Health and BC CDC because they've been working on something called the PERC, which is Population Environmental Risk Characteristic. And this project is led by Dr. Sarah Henderson and Dr. David McVie with co-op student Karen Lee from BC Centre for Disease Control. We're trying to answer two questions. The first is, can we use health administrative data to accurately identify people who are vulnerable to these climate emergencies before and during the occurrence of these emergencies? And if so, how can we verify that this potential outreach is beneficial for residents in Merit? Before continuing on, just want to recognize the historical context of registries in Canada because they haven't been used they haven't always had the best intentions. For example, in the 60s, registries were created to take children away from First Nations families in BC. And so throughout the work, we are very cognizant of our positionality and also approaching the work with humility and understanding why they may be resistant to working on this project. And that's okay. And you might recall the Jasper fire and now the Manitoba and Saskatchewan fires that are happening in the prairies right now. I think it was last year when this happened for Jasper. They had the Vulnerable Persons Registry launched in 2021, 2 years before their major event. And so I did a study of similar registries across Canada. And in the next slide, you'll see that, sorry, it's quite small, but I'll walk you through the important points from this table. The first one is from Kings County in Nova Scotia. They established their registry in 2018, and their enrollment is purely self-enrollment for children enrolling their elderly parents or healthcare providers enrolling their patients. They included people who are elderly with disabilities or dependent on electricity to live. And their registry had about 30 people. And they have deployed their registry system previously on a small scale, and they do outreach wellness checks with the people who are on the registry. Validation for all of the registries in Canada have been anecdotal, so there hasn't been any scientific evidence to any of these registries. And then Sault Ste. Marie started theirs in 2011, so they were the first in Canada because they had a case where a child passed away from a power outage, and this child needed electricity to breathe. And so they started that was the incident that sparked their city's launch of many regions call these VPRs, Vulnerable Persons Registry, but BCCDC is trying to move away from using the word vulnerable, just in fear of sort of stigmatizing this population. So in summary, this table just shows that all of the registries in Canada that is trying to achieve something similar to what we do are dependent on self-enrollment. And you might see some benefits and challenges with purely relying on self-referral, because people who maybe have dementia, they're living alone, people who don't consume media or live in really remote places without access to internet, they probably need the most help. That's what we're finding from our research, but they're not getting them. And if we just rely on self-enrollment, we're missing these people. Thank you. And so in 2023, 2 years ago, when I first came to Merit, I spoke with, I think you can probably click through the number of communities and folks that I talked to while I was here. So Alana from Interior Health was very kind and introduced me to health directors from different First Nations communities around Merit. And then I talked to assisted living facilities, long-term care facilities, Interior Health, people working in the ministry, mental health and substance use networks, and different nonprofit health services that provide services for Indigenous and First Nations populations living in more urban areas, as well as the sheltered communities, and also responder services like Merit Community Police, RCMP, and the Emergency Services District and Merit Fire Rescue Department. And also I talked to Mike and Mayor Mike about the issue, as many of you know that he's very passionate about emergency preparedness for Merit. And so from talking to all these people, what we heard was that these were the factors that make someone more susceptible to climate emergencies. So the elderly, people who don't drive, don't have access to vehicles, people with disabilities, no access to phones or computers, living with lower socioeconomic status, mental health challenges, no fixed address, living near riverbanks or higher hills, having pets or livestock. So these were the factors that we focused on when we applied these into administrative data. So we started after the community engagement, hearing what people said were factors that predispose someone to be more susceptible. We started testing methods to identify these susceptible people. And what we recognize is that each person faces a unique combination of this when it comes to climate resilience. So a person can be of the older age and have mobility challenges, being in wheelchairs, and also have lots of health conditions and cannot get their medicines during the emergency. So there's a lot of algorithm variation that we're considering when we look at these algorithms. So I'll show you the data sets that we have access to. So we have MSP data, where we use that to identify patterns of healthcare conditions. We have access to pharmacy information, chronic disease registry, home care and long-term care information, and ambulatory care system information. And all of them help us identify these are the data sets we use to generate different algorithms. And so this is a profile of merit CHSA, which includes not just the city of Merit, but the surrounding areas. That's the healthcare boundary that's established. So in this Merit CHSA, we have about 16,000 people, and these are the distribution of people who experience these challenges. So for example, 1,700 of these are above the age of 75, and 1,600 of them have mobility difficulties, etc. And we tested different algorithms. So for example, we put different, you can think of them as different weights. So if we put more weight on A, then we would get a larger proportion of that feature in the algorithm. So if you look at algorithm A, you'll see that the total number of people identified are different because of the weights are different. And so how do we know which one is better? And that's why we're only looking at the previous slide. If we look at the overlap, we can be more confident that if two algorithms are identifying the same people, we're more confident that these people really need help. Because we don't want too many false positives where we don't have the resources. Dedicate more to people who really know. That's why we're looking at the overlap as a way to validate our algorithms. Okay. And when we mapped out the people who were identified, this is just a rough geography because we didn't have the people's exact address, but algorithm A is shown in purple on the left, algorithm B is shown in orange, red on the right. And you'll see that they will have different people. Yeah. And then the next slide will show you when we zoom out, the difference is also there with the, when we apply different weights. So that's why the overlap is there. And so the next steps for us is that we're doing internal validation with the data that we have, because now we have access to more home care data that we didn't have access to. Also trying to see if we can potentially work with the ESS to get data from them for internal validation to know like exactly who accessed that access help during that event. And we also spoke with the BC Privacy and Confidentiality Committee, because as you might know that we're working with individual data. And so even though they're de-identified and anonymized, there is significant risk. So say if somebody was identified by the algorithm to be susceptible, then we notify this person and we like that their privacy was breached. And so that's why there's significant privacy and confidentiality aspects that we're working with the provincial ethics board on. And then external evaluation we'll do more of that in the fall. We were hoping to verify the value of the approach by working with different. This will be in consultation and collaboration with Ontario Health and First Nations Health Authority. And that's thank you. That's a picture of Mike and myself in 2023, and Alana from Ontario and from. That's it. We're welcoming. Basically, I wanted to give. I promised Mike when I came in 2023 that I would give an update when I come back. So this is the presentation and where we're at with the project. And we wanted to gather feedback and input from the community and from council about what we think, because if we do trial this registry and merit in the future, we can see benefits of this, challenges, concerns, etc., so that we can address things early as soon as we can.
Okay. Thanks, Minnie. CAO Wade.
I have a couple of questions, if that's okay. So the other registries didn't include homeless people living in long-term care, were those purposeful exclusions, like homelessness, for instance? I can understand long-term care because they're being provided direct care,
Yeah.
but things like homelessness, I know that you don't necessarily have access to that through health, but would that be an intent, is to also exclude homelessness, or is there a chance to work with BC Housing, given that it's also a provincial agency, to be able to include homelessness?
That's a really good question. And that's why when I talked to I think Nicola Valley Shelter,
Mhm.
I think there is a database of folks that we were trying to get access to. But in other registries, like in Sault Ste. Marie, the reason that they don't have it is because they don't have data. And
Okay.
that's the issue with all of the models and algorithms is that we're limited by the data that we have access to.
Mhm.
And so, when I talked to the shelter, people working at the shelter, they said that it was during the 2021 event, it was quite difficult to track people who don't have a fixed address.
Mhm.
So, I think she recommended a data set, and we're still trying to, with the Ministry of Health, it's very difficult to get access to data, and things can take a while, especially with more susceptible populations like people with no fixed address. But we are trying to, we now finally have a way to get people who are living alone. We have data, we have sort of approximation for that, and also data from home care for that. But no fixed address is something that we're still trying. Yeah, we're definitely wanting to, we're hoping that maybe if we can get ESS
Mhm.
data, because a lot of the people volunteering with the ESS at the time said that quite a few of the people with no fixed address use the service. So we're hoping that we can get some data from that.
So my second question would be, at what point we have a real number? So you've got comorbid situations. So somebody who's elderly with a mobility issue who lives alone, that identifies in 3 different categories. But when would you be the point where you'd have a real number of actual people in that situation versus people who fit all those categories?
I see.
So that we have an idea about resources that we might need to have prepared through ESS or through our evacuation planning.
The ultimate goal of the project is to support, say, evacuation and emergency preparedness before and after. So
Mhm.
it'll be, we envision some kind of dashboard system that is particular to the community,
Mhm.
and you can probably toggle, say, okay, I want to look at people who have these overlaps and
Mhm.
people who have sort of overlaps as in like living alone,
Yeah.
having these morbid conditions, and then you can add different layers to it.
Okay, because I think that's a difference, right? Like you're showing in the algorithm, the second algorithm, like 219
Yes.
people, when in reality it could be 20 people, but they have several, I mean, that's a bit unrealistic, I guess, but there's could potentially a big difference between 219 and 100 in the number of resources we need to manage that during an evacuation, right?
Mhm.
So having the ability to have a real number, instead of having each of those, you're identifying them through each of the comorbidities instead
Oh.
of,
No, we're actually identifying them through a number of comorbidities. Like so say algorithm A
Mhm.
had people who had more than 5 comorbid conditions,
Okay.
and algorithm B would have people who have, say, more than 2. So those are sort of the weights
Mhm.
that we're hitting.
Yeah, but I'm saying if we just knew that, there are 50 people versus there are 210 people who meet each of the comorbidities, right? Like I'm just looking for a real number versus a
Right.
they have this many comorbidities sort of situation.
If you go to the slide where there is the algorithm overlap, that is the number that we have. So right now we have 15 algorithms that give us numbers that ranges from 200 to 500. Yeah, so we do have that, but we just we're doing more internal validation to know like what, because 200 to 500 is still big. Exactly, that's what we're hoping to do. Perfect, thank you. Thank you.
Counselors, any other questions or comments? Okay, well, thank you, Ms. Tang, for the presentation. Okay, we're going to move on, unfinished business, bylaws, no unfinished business, and then bylaws, 7.1, development approval procedure bylaw. I guess we just need to adopt this. That the city merit development approval procedure bylaw 2388 2025 be adopted. I need two movers. Councillor Charney, Councillor Etchart. Any discussion? Councillor Olgan.
So just quick question for staff as well as council members. So I feel like this is a good update. So it enhances many areas. I'm just curious about public notification distances. In this bylaw, it states that properties within 30 meters are notified. I was doing some research and there is no standard, recommendation for the province. But I was doing, as part of this research, there are some municipalities that they have 150 meter radius. And I feel like there could be some benefits of extending that distance. So we have heard in the past that some in this case, some property owners were not notified, perhaps because they are not within that radius. So would staff feel comfortable increasing that distance?
Mr. Chair, yeah, ultimately, yeah, so it's 30 minutes or 30 meters, but council can also, you're right, it is sort of up to the municipality. Some municipalities might also have greater distance for certain types of development. Let's say somebody's opening a corner store in a residential-ish area, right, in a mixed-use area, or a cannabis store. There's the opportunity to kind of modify depending on the type of development. I don't know that there's a reason not to consider it, Mr. Green, or to do consider it. Yeah, sure, that's fine.
So I would suggest that, given the scale, sorry, thank you, Your Worship, start off correctly. I would suggest that the intent of that is sort of a minimum, and that'll be based on the smaller scale type things that we would need to refer out to. We would alter that as necessary. And we got to think with some of the other communities that you had researched, depending on the scale of the community, the scale of the land masses within it, and how things interact. Merritt's actually a fairly tight community. So going wider as a standard, if it's something on a residential lot, you're only really impacting the neighbors in that neighboring lots for a lot of the small things. If you opened it up to 150 meters, you might be taking in an entire block, which could tend to open up conversations, I guess, and concerns that aren't overly relevant to the specific development and the adjacent properties. So I think we can easily scale it up, and that's going to be dependent on the situation. I would consider this to be a minimum.
So, and I just want to add something else here. So I was not recommending to increase it to 150. That could be a huge radius. I was thinking more of around 50 meters instead of 30 meters. I feel like this would reduce the surprise decisions. This could build trust with our municipal processes and would encourage earlier and more meaningful public engagement. I see the benefit, but again, so I want to hear from councilors as well.
It's important to remember that in section 8B, that we have the ability to extend that area. Again, things that council might identify as higher conflicts, or, people will have more concerns in. If somebody's doing a small development in a neighborhood where they're relatively small lots, then you get, again, many people, so it might not be as meaningful. But I think us being able to use, or council being able to use to their discretion to identify what might cause more concern in a neighborhood, to extend that is certainly something we have to be aware of and we have to action it a bit more, maybe.
Counselor Charney?
I can tell that. I'll reiterate on number B, it says the distance in A is a minimum and may be broadened to reach more recipients at the discretion of council or administrator. So I don't know, maybe I feel that maybe we should increase the 30 to a certain number so that we don't have to keep coming back to council and the administrator. Maybe we can get a magic number that is not 150, but more than 30.
I still think that no matter what, you're gonna want to set a minimum distance and then allow for myself or a designate to identify, the places that we know are gonna be conflict. I've seen municipalities where they make a list of those things, but you never get all of the things on the list, right? If you grocery shop it, you're probably gonna miss something. So if council wants us to extend that, that's fine. I still think it's a minimum. You still want to have that discretion that holds in B. And I just want to make a correction that 9B should actually say the distance in 9A is a minimum. So we'll make that correction upon. Sorry, you need to amend it. So we'll have to amend it and then adopt it. To make that correction.
Okay.
We'll walk you through that. That gets complicated.
On with what CAO's. You don't want to cast a wide net. Did that once already. Sorry. We don't want to cast a wide net for small, insignificant types of things. This is a procedural bylaw where it sets a standard and the net you're going to cast with the minimum on there. Think of it from the basis of, like I say, the smallest issue. If we cast a large net by setting a minimum that's too high, you're going to encourage feedback where it's not necessary or it's the wrong kind of feedback. And this isn't something that comes to you all the time. The procedural bylaw deal with it. When we bring you items to council, we will tell you during the write-up from staff what we did differently if necessary and if we widened out that circle. This isn't going to be coming to you all the time with a decision on what do you think we need to do. This sets a minimum. We use the experience of the staff to determine what the subject is. If we're dealing with a small parcel here next to a 10-acre parcel there, and it's only 30 meters, we're probably looking a little farther out because that larger parcel is going to impact more places. But a very small parcel is only really going to be impacting these things, the parcels around it, if it's a small issue. That makes sense?
Yeah, I think it makes sense.
So I think it comes down largely to the trust in the process. And it is something that I would recommend we go with now because we don't want to burden the small things, get way too much feedback from too far away over very simple things. We can adjust annually or whenever we bring this back. It's not a big deal to bring the actual thing back after we test and see if there's any conflicts. But I don't think we're going to have conflicts. The staff is very astute as it relates to the subject matter and what it's going to impact, and they'll widen out as necessary.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Green. I agree with you. Thank you. And Councillor Baxter.
I would like to amend the number B, this say the distance is 9, bracket A is the minimum. Second.
Councillors Charney and Olgan, seconded. Okay. All in favor?
Unless somebody would like to amend the other resolution in regards to the distance, then you would just vote on the resolution that's on the table now that we've confused everybody.
Councillor Richard, yeah.
I just wanted to ask a question about, with the minimums of the 30, do we still have the 100-meter minimum for cannabis and alcohol establishments when they apply for that? Because I know in the past, when we had a lot of applications for cannabis stores, that came up often, and then it couldn't be within a acre within 100 meters. So will this change that?
So there's some provincial legislation around that anyways.
Yeah.
and how close it can be to those things.
Like a school or?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it doesn't necessarily need to be in our procedure bylaw because it's
Because it's already
superseded by
provincial?
legislation.
okay.
And then if there was a question about that, this would certainly be, you know, there are lots of things that I can think of, but probably shouldn't say out loud that people might be concerned about. That we would go, oh, we should probably do a bit more notice than that, than the minimum on those. Right? So yeah, we don't have it and you have to have it in here because it is provincial
Provincial.
legislation.
Okay,
legislation.
I just want to clarify. Thanks.
Okay, any other discussion? No? Okay, so we're the resolution is amended. We're gonna vote on. Do we have two movers on that already? Okay, and we're gonna vote on that? All in favor? Okay, so moving on. So we've completed 7.1. Okay, moving on to new business, 8.1 municipal security issuing resolution for exit 286. Recommendation, I'll just read it, that council approve borrowing from the Municipal Finance Authority of British Columbia as part of the 2025 fall borrowing session, $4,178,000 as authorized through loan authorization bylaw number 2307 2021, and that the Thompson Nicola Regional District be requested to consent to our borrowing over the 30-year term and include the borrowing in a security issuing bylaw. Do I have any movers? Councillor Olgan, Councillor Baxter. Okay. And any questions, discussion? Councillor Olgan, or sorry, Councillor Olgan.
So before I ask my questions, can the staff provide a quick summary of where we are?
I'm going to take the time to do the not technical summary because the CFO will do the more technical part. So ultimately, one of the two owners of the property that was developed as part of Exit 286, for which we provided on-site water and sewer services, or off-site water and sewer services, I should say. One of them has paid their portion of the short-term borrowing. The other has not, which was forecasted as at the beginning of the project. We were under the understanding that the second landowner would not be doing so. And so we would be transitioning that portion of the $7.8 million-ish, somewhere around there, small change, to long-term borrowing. And that would be recovered through some form of taxation or local area service improvement bylaw. So that's what you're seeing here, is that 4.178 million is the unpaid portion of the water sewer offsite work. And now the CFO is open to technical questions.
Councillor Charney.
Okay, so it's my understanding that for the Palomino group, the water and sewer has already been up there and it cost the city, their portion is approximately 4.5. I'm not going to get picky on that, but approximately 4.5 million. Now we're going to pay this through taxation. They are going to pay it through their taxation. So our taxpayers are not going to be affected through this.
This will go.
Sorry.
This will go to parcel tax or to a local area service agreement bylaw. Well, so that will be coming to you in the next little bit.
There we go.
Is there any way we can get this less than 30 years? That's a long time.
Up to 30-year is legislated and was in the original loan authorization bylaw that was approved in 2021. And so we are following that up to 30-year provision that was in the original borrowing bylaw.
So the interest that we pay and the money we get through their parcel tax, is it balancing out or are we?
So that will be my job so this has to progress through a series of steps over the next few months. The first step here tonight is to allow us to communicate with the regional district. So this will go to the TNRD with the certified resolution in the package that you see. They will progress on their end through the Municipal Finance Authority, who will have a fall borrowing meeting in September. Once all those borrowing terms are established and communicated through the regional district back to us, it'll be my job to set a parcel tax rate such that the interest and the principal will be paid by that rate.
Okay.
But we don't have borrowing terms at this point. Tonight, you're simply authorizing us to communicate with the regional district. They will progress the borrowing through the Municipal Finance Authority. When we get those terms, you'll have another bylaw come back to establish the parcel tax or local area service tax on that parcel. But borrowing terms are flexible and could change. So we can't tell you exactly what that number is tonight. When we get those borrowing terms established, I'll be back in front of you with an updated bylaw.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Etcher.
So I just had a question because if the one section is doing the 30-year local area service, if the property is sold to another developer, do they have the option of paying out the, no?
No.
So we'll just,
So we set terms on communication of intention with both property owners, and one elected to pay out and the other one elected to have it converted. We're going to be locked in on long-term debt. There's an initial period, which I believe is about 10 years. Then there's a rate reset period in the middle of that borrowing cycle. But we're going to be locked into this now that it's progressing to this stage. They won't have the option of paying it out.
yeah,
That's what we were progressing over the last, say,
Mayor did
five
that
months with both parties.
with the sewer system in Colville in 93, but if right now, is it just going to be based on the whole parcel? And then if the lots are subdivided for homes or something that
Correct. The initial parcel will be
One lot.
levied to pay back the principal and interest. If it is subdivided, we would have to come up with a mechanism of ensuring that the principal and interest obligation related to the original
Size.
parcel,
Okay,
whatever those terms might be, that still makes the annual or semi-annual debt obligation payments.
and do we have to get approval from the TNRD when we do that, or we just have the annual principal that's due? And then it will just depend on the parcel size in the subdivision that would be through the city.
So the regional district is involved simply to execute the borrowing with the Municipal Finance Authority. So that will be executed at that point. It'll be up to the municipality to set bylaws that recover the funds to make those payments.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Ogan.
Okay, so I have a quick a few questions actually. So do we have a breakdown? So I would like to have a better idea how exactly will the 4.1 million will be spent? Do we have any idea?
The money has already been expended. There was an original short-term authorization of 7.554 million that was completed.
Right.
Part of the terms of the agreement were that deposits would be held by the municipality to secure any cost overages above that amount. So we executed on that. The project has largely reached substantial completion. There's still some works to be completed, which we factored into the deposits that we're holding. So all of that original 7.554 was already expended in providing the water and sewer service. We've recovered 3 million change from one of the parties.
Right.
And now we're trying to progress steps to recover the remaining amounts from the other party.
Okay, that changed a lot in my analysis. So just to address Councillor Charney's concern, taxpayers might be responsible at some point if we don't get paid, if we are unable to recover through parcel tax. correct?
So what would happen is that it would proceed, if it would just proceed like any other property to tax sale, if we're unable to, if they don't pay their parcel tax, their property tax, or their utilities, it all goes on their tax bill. And if it remains unpaid for 3 years as per the legislation, it would go to tax sale.
So,
And it would either be, we would either recover those taxes through the sale to another person or another entity, or the city would become the owner of that property. So ultimately, there would not be a cost to the ratepayers because that property would then become an asset to us.
so, why did the property owner opt for long-term debt financing instead of paying upfront? Because the other party paid upfront. So do we know?
This was part of the contract that was negotiated before this administration came in. So we don't know their reasons behind it. We do know that that there was not, they had never indicated there was an intention to pay it upfront. We had been anticipating for the entirety of the work period that they would be going to some sort of long-term payment.
So last question, what would happen if this resolution doesn't go through at this stage right now here?
Seems unlikely, but
So currently we're in short-term borrowing position, so we have daily interest obligations on this amount
on that
of
money.
principal that we're incurring, and we're securing against deposits that are being held. So far, those deposits are sufficient to cover the work that's been done, the work that we anticipate, and the interest obligations up to this point. This is simply allowing us to send this borrowing to the regional
Long-term.
district. Should we fail to meet those obligations, the city will be responsible for those short-term borrowing costs for another cycle.
How much are we paying for that short-term interest?
I believe it's approximately $700 a day, but I would like to check that and send that to council separately.
No more questions.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all in favor? Thank you. Next is 8.2 disposition, notice of disposition of land. Recommendation is that council approve the disposition of PID 032-485-581, that part of DL 122 KDYD shown on plan APP 124029 to Elcon Investments Limited for the sum of $79,399.17. And second recommendation, that council directs staff to provide notice in accordance with the community charter provisions for the city's intent to dispose of this land. Two movers. On that, Councillor Baxter, Councillor Ogan, any questions, comments? Okay. Councillor Ogan.
So my only question is that this value was made based on the 2023 assessment, BC assessment. So I just want to understand the rationale why we are not using the 2025 BC assessment.
ultimately, this was negotiated in writing by the CAO of the day for this value. So because it was in writing, it was an agreed upon terms of sale.
So there was no clause stating that it was going to meet the current market conditions at that time
No.
the resolution goes through? Okay, so thank you. Last question. Will this sale affect future traffic patterns, emergency access, or any utility servicing in the area?
So we have been working closely with the developer, and Mr. Green has helped to develop a traffic plan. We'll have to work with MOTT now to have our vision brought forward, but ultimately Development Services will not be approving any development that would have those impacts. So they can own the land, but if it doesn't meet the requirements for emergency services or other types of servicing, then the development won't be approved.
Councillor Baxter.
So this won't affect Phillips eventually connecting to Ransom, right?
So at this point, we have, again, there's an alternate plan to try and make the traffic flow better in this area.
Counselor Charney.
Is there any idea of the street improvements that are projected with the sale of the land? Sidewalks, et cetera, et cetera?
It will all go to development services. It will all be approved as per required through the development services.
Okay, but I'm just saying it's supposed to be specifically for that area, so I'm just wondering if they have anything projected of improvements that they are planning for that
Yeah,
area.
it currently meets like standards, our development standards, which would be sidewalks and
Okay.
The proper width of road. And I think Mr. Green's been working on parking requirements with them and alternative parking to meet their parking requirements. So it will meet all the development standards that in our bylaws.
Okay. All in favor? Oh, Counselor Baxter.
Can I hear from Mr. Green to see, like, does he know what's gonna happen with this development? Or is there gonna be a road going through to Van Street? Like, does he know what might happen?
So he can come up, but ultimately we don't know yet because we haven't gotten approved plans yet.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. You may recall a little while back, we brought a plan forward regarding an alternate road cross section, include pocket parking. That was the start of all this. It included a larger parcel at the time, and we're working with the developer right now to phase that development so that we work largely in a smaller area right now while we look at a plan that I worked with some traffic engineers on to cure the entire access issues all the way through that end of town. We're working with MOTT right now to get their blessing on what we're trying to do, which will then come back to you as information at some point to see the entire picture, which will then inform the OCP. But what we're really trying to do right now is provide them something to work with on a smaller scale, similar to what Phillips had been doing, to allow the rest of that area to go through review before they finish developing the property. So it's actually exciting that they want to do something to get going. And we're working on the interim steps that'll get us there. But ultimately, we do have a plan that looks really good for that entire end of town. Just got to get everybody to agree on it.
Counselor Ogan.
So a technical question. So if we agree to move forward tonight, so there's gonna be some notification. So at that point, are there any other people or will other people have the opportunity to express their interest in purchasing this? Or it's gonna be specifically for the company?
So it would be specifically for this, if there are people bring forward concerns and council chooses not to move this forward as part of the notification process, it wouldn't be for sale elsewhere. This is simply because of
Just
this
for this.
development. Yeah.
Okay, so I just want to add, so because we are not using the 2025 BC assessment, I'm not in agreement of this. Thank you.
While I can appreciate Councillor Ogan's comments about the value, at the time when they were doing the development in the area, that's where we also kind of got value for the lots when they were trying to just give a donation, or I shouldn't say donation, fees instead of a park. And so everything was kind of based on that 899,000, which is a formula and how the 79,000 was determined. So because of that, I think it's reasonable because the park dedication was kind of based on that amount and we ended up with park space instead of finance. So that's why I support it. Just so you have that info. Thank you.
Counselor Charney.
Do we know what the 2025 land assessment is? The difference between the two?
If I could just comment on what Councillor Etchart just mentioned. Currently in the plan as it sits, they're actually giving us a little bit more park dedication than is required. There will also be DCCs applied to this that will support any of the road developments, intersection changes and that sort of stuff. We did have several of our, so this is identified as a road in the OCP. This is the only place that this would work, like you can't just buy it or offer a sale on it. But based on our other properties that we've had assessments done recently by an external realty consultant, this is pretty accurate in regards to cost based on those other assessments, but I think that Mr.
Yeah, I hope that he has better luck than me. I tried PID, I tried roll, and I wasn't
It-
able to get the BC
And
assessment.
it might not have an, because it's road allocation, so it may not actually have an assessment.
So when I consulted with current realtors, they thought it was somewhat low. That's why I'm recommending this.
I mean, I guess part of it too is that ultimately we would have to hold this land and we would never get anything for it. So I think that this might have been based on that original discussion, might have based on the fact that there's no other use for this land. And so this amount wouldn't come in any other way. So that could be a reason why. I'm just speculating because there isn't any other way to sell this land.
Okay.
Or dispose of.
Councillor Etchart.
We had dealt with something similar when we did the rezone of the section that's the extension of the home hardware. Because about 4 or 5 years ago, somebody was hoping to put up an apartment there on that section of Coldwater. And then things didn't work out because it was misunderstanding over how many stories one could apply for because there was a section of that road that is in front of the Rainbow Apartments that shouldn't have been there. And then we had to kind of do a similar kind of rezoning back in 2020. So we have done this before. So that's also why I'm in support of it.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Not in favor? Or against, opposed? Okay. Okay, I did read the second part, but we'll read the second part again. It was all included, right? Okay, okay. Moving on, 8.3 UBCM Minister Meeting Requests. Recommendation, the council directs staff to submit meeting requests for the following topics.
So at this point, we're just looking for direction from council to start scheduling meetings with ministers, staff meetings. We can schedule at a later time. But nice to know if we had the thoughts of what you'd like to meet about.
Councillor Etchart?
Well, just top of mind, if we could have a meeting with the health minister, I think that would be key because that's a constant issue around here. And then municipal affairs for the taxes. And even if we have that on our wish list, the chances of getting everything that we ask for are unlikely if it's, so I mean, I think everybody will have kind of their requests of things that they hope for, but I think those two, especially since we have a new health minister since the last time we tried to meet with the health minister, I think it might be a good time to meet in person. Yes, yeah. So that, I don't know what everyone else thinks, but I think at least those two.
Councillor Rogan?
Yeah, so we have 5 resolutions that we put forward. So I think that it could be beneficial to meet with the Minister of Health for sure, Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General to deal with the modernized police cost sharing formulas. The General and Deputy Premier, Victim Services Program funding. So that's something that we can discuss with that minister. So it's only 5. So I would recommend to request the 5 and see what we get. So Minister of Finance. So that could be to talk about the delinquent property taxes. And the Minister of Transportation to deal with the Small Community Transit Service Fund.
So ultimately, what you're suggesting, Councillor Organ, is that those are the ministers and those are the topics, basically the resolutions that we put forward. So we want them as resolutions and we want to have a personalized touch with those ministries. Perfect.
But can we touch base at the next meeting to finalize since Councillor Egan and the mayors?
We have to submit by July 2nd. So you can, if the council members that aren't here, but ultimately sometimes you just have to make decisions without everybody in attendance.
Well, I'm in agreement with what's been. I think it's great. It's just the mayor may have another suggestion or would want to request another one or. How about forestry? Was that addressed in here?
No.
I mean, that might be a sixth.
I can say the mayor's had several meetings with forestry, Minister of Forestry.
Yeah.
So he is already in close contact with him around some of our concerns about resource industry. Has had some good contact with the Minister of Health, but it doesn't hurt for
I
a visit
just,
to Minister of Health.
I just think he may have add-ons to the 5. That's all. I agree with everything that's been discussed, but I just think that he may have input. That's all.
Okay. Any other comments, questions, or we want to defer this to another?
I like the list that we have. And I just think that before we make the final decision, that we should just confirm it with them as well at the next meeting. So maybe if we could defer, that would be nice, just to include them. I like what we have. And because we may not get everything that we ask for, why not ask for 6 or, well, that's a lot too, but we might not even get the 5, so.
Yeah, it's hit and miss. The first year we got everything.
In 2022, we
And
got
last year we
everything,
got
which was
hardly
amazing.
Anything.
Yeah. So you ask for the sun and the moon and you might get 1 or 2.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we would like to make a recommendation for deferral to the June 24th meeting.
Yes.
Here
please.
for a regular meeting of council. So you need a seconder for that.
Councillor Charney.
And
To
then-
second that, to defer till the next council meeting.
The 24th. please.
24th.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it's just a vote.
And all in favor? Oh, Councillor Hogan, did you? Okay.
My question is to make sure that staff will have enough time to elaborate these presentations. So if the 24 works for you, I'm happy to vote in favor. If with something that you need more time to elaborate these presentations, then we should just move forward tonight.
Yeah, and we don't have to provide all the information to them. We just have to put our requests in with a topic.
That sounds good.
What we can do is we can start with the 5 that you are discussing. We will start building those. Then on the 24th, if there's anything further that you'd like to bring forward, then we would add those as well, but we'll start with the basic 5.
Thank you.
Okay, all in favor to defer to the 24th, meeting of 24th? All opposed? Okay, moving on, 8.4, June 2025 grant applications.
Because these are all different grants for different activities, these 3, you might want to do them separate, each
Okay.
one individually.
First recommendation that council directs staff to apply for the infrastructure planning grant program up to a maximum of $10,000 to conduct an accessibility assessments of the Civic Center and Nicola Valley Memorial Arena, Nicola Valley Aquatic Center, and the Cadet Hall. Movers, Councillor Olgan, Councillor Baxter. Any discussion? Oh, Councillor Charney.
Is this a matching fund grant or is it just straight across the board?
Your worship. So the first 5 is available at 100%. The second 5,000 or the second 10,000 would be at 50%. So the total amount that's eligible is 10,000. If the cost of doing that scope of work is 5,000 or less, it would be fully funded. If it comes in more than that, we would be funded beyond the 5 at 50%. So the maximum exposure is $5,000 in terms of a budget amendment.
Okay. So, after the 5,000, where does the funding come from for this one?
So this would come, sorry, this would come from just the operational budget for these facilities, right? This is part of the ability to do a proper accessibility plan through our age-friendly accessibility committee. Having a proper accessibility study, it will also help with us with identifying things that we have to think about in any retrofits that are
Yeah,
happening. to
yeah,
this
I know
building.
that. I'm just wondering where
Yeah.
the funds are
So,
coming.
so it just will come out of their regular operational funds.
Okay, so that's the emergency management?
No, it would
no?
come out of like the operating funds for each of these facilities. So this would come out of Mr. Zackel's operating budgets.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, recommendation number 2, the council directs staff to apply for the Disaster Resilience and Innovation Funding Program up to a maximum of $400,000 to develop a climate adaptation plan. Any two movers, Councillor Baxter, Councillor Etchart? Any questions, comments? Councillor Olgan.
So I'm just assuming that this THRIP program is highly competitive. So have we submitted 2 applications to the same program in the past? We just want to see how successful that can be. If not, to decide which one would have better impact if we have to choose between those 2.
The grant. The 2 streams that we're applying for drift funding. So I believe that when we looked into it, they didn't have any issue with submitting multiple streams. So in the past, we have applied for things like KenGuard. At the same time, recovery may be applying on other streams. These are not for construction activities. This round of drift from a capital infrastructure perspective is going to be on one of the diking projects in the recovery operations. These are a separate stream of funding within drift for like design and consulting type engagement. That's not the actual construction of physical infrastructure. So they don't have any issue with us applying for both of those streams of funding at the same time.
Councillor Charney.
Again, my question is this matching funds or is
This is 100%. So whatever we're
100%.
awarded up to $400,000 is the authorization in
Perfect.
terms of scope of work.
Councillor Olgan.
So my question is tied to her question, I would say. So are the 400,000 sufficient to full design and engineering these projects, or is going to be an additional request to council?
So depending on how much we receive will determine the scope of work. So if we're just going to be looking at, like say we get $100,000, we might just do something like the, the extreme temperature mapping. We won't do the full scope of work. Yeah. So what we do will fit within that $100,000 or $400,000 or whatever we get.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? And another recommendation here, the council directs staff to apply to the Disaster Resilience and Innovation Funding Program up to a maximum of $400,000 for design, engineering, and feasibility for cooling infrastructure projects. Movers? Councillor Etchart, Councillor Baxter? Questions, comments? No? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, 8.5 asset management policy. The Policy and Bylaw Review Committee considered this policy at the April 3rd, 2025 meeting. Recommendation is that council adopt the asset management policy and recommendation that the fixed assets policy be repealed. Need two movers for that. Councillor Baxter. Councillor Owen. Okay, any questions, comments? Councillor Charney.
I was just looking under long-term sustainability and resilience. It says that the city will consider socio-cultural, environmental and economic factors and implications when making and implementing asset management. What is socio-cultural? I'd like clarification on that. How does that affect asset management?
So sociocultural might be an archaeological site or a piece of art. It might be a difference in how people view certain things from now till 10 years from now. So it's sort of the feel of the community and the values that the community holds.
It's kind of wishy-washy.
It is, but it's the language they use these days. Ultimately, what we think of like, so that the asset management environment is changing, right? We never would have concluded natural assets 5 or 6 years ago, and now natural assets are included as part of our assets. So the river is one of our natural assets. The aquifer is a natural asset. So as asset management evolves, there becomes this sort of different. It's meant to be a living document, ultimately.
Okay. That was my question. Thank you. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Okay, moving on to 8.6, the Gordon and Crawford intersection review recommendation that the June 3rd, 2025 report of the Director of Public Works and Engineering Service entitled Gordon and Crawford intersection review be received for information. I need two movers for that. Councillor Ogun, Councillor Baxter. Any comments? Questions? Councillor Baxter.
So this was only for information, so like if the community liked a certain plan, this is gonna go out to the community in the future, so they can pick the plan, or? Because option 2 was the one that a lot of people talked to me that they liked. Because it just would make the traffic flow nicer in that area.
I'll bring Mr. Green up to answer that question. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. This isn't a pick it off the menu thing. This is something we're going to be doing and I'm informing you about. The reason that leg of the intersection got closed at some point seems to be a little bit vague and was probably a knee-jerk reaction to something rather than studied through science and engineering. So we did the study. We've got recommendations that take us to a certain point. So very much like we discussed earlier, we can start with little things. We can put some lane delineation in, add a bit of an island and a stop sign to open up that lane so it reinforces the stop. Later on, we can channelize the lane back farther and open up back onto Boat Street farther to bring more volume in. So it's a progression with the idea we're going to get to a semi ultimate configuration at some point. That particular area, we can't envision a full ultimate at this point. We can only kind of work with what we have due to constraints of space and whatnot. And there's a lot of undeveloped land up in that area yet that's going to impact things and other access areas. But this is a progression to improve that area flow through a few different options or a few different budget cycles as we implement. If that makes any sense. I felt like I talked in a circle, but.
Sounds good to me. Councillor Ogun.
No, I just want to say that it sounds a good plan. So if you recall, we discussed this a long time ago And I had recommended that approach even without that assessment. So I'm happy to know that we got the assessment and we are following that recommendation.
Yeah, and actually, it's very important that we do things under engineering science so that we don't just implement something that was a knee-jerk reaction or somebody's opinion at the time. It has to be backed up by science, traffic counts, collision data, those kind of things.
Councillor Charney.
With the new developments going on up there, do you envision any more problems past that intersection that we should be addressing or looking in the future to address?
Yeah, I would expect the new developments as things change up there, especially from the four-way stop where you turn to the right to go to Walmart.
Mhm.
When something happens across the road, there's going to be some likely improvements in that area. Also, we're taking the potential for where Airport Road comes into the north of there farther, there'll be another intersection and that road built in, so we're going to be splitting traffic up anyways. So it's really just a matter of the densification when it happens. They will be doing traffic studies, they'll be measuring their impact, and they'll be required by and large to contribute to the solutions out there.
Perfect.
Sorry, and I'm glad that Mr. Green noted that, because I just wanted to reinforce again that as development goes on up there, there are requirements of them to meet our traffic requirements and for them to pay to, so that the ratepayers are not footing the entire bill.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Okay, all in favor? All opposed? Okay. 8.7, the Merritt Golf and Country Club lease. Recommendation that the May 23rd, 2025 Merritt Golf and Country Club lease report from the Director of Community Services be received for information. Need a couple movers for that. Councillor Baxter. Councillor Olgan. Okay.
So I would like to discuss in more detail this agenda item. And I would like to see if it's possible to move it to the closed meeting.
Okay.
A motion, yep. Correct.
Okay, we need a mover and seconder for that. Okay, and then seconder for that, and all in favor? Okay, notices of motion. 9.1 AEDs at city-owned facilities. Councillor Charney submitted the following notice of motion in the May 27, 2025 regular meeting of council. Recommendation that city purchase AEDs for all city-owned facilities. I need a mover seconder for that. Councillor Charney or Councillor Baxter, Councillor Owen. Any questions, comments? Councillor Baxter.
Are there grants available so that they can help offset some of the costs?
So we will, when we have this resolution, we will start exploring what the cost of this is and if there are grants available, because currently it's not budgeted. So we'll have to have a sense of the cost. We'll have to bring that to council once we've done the research to approve it, to go out and spend those funds, because at this point we can't give you that number.
What was the cost for each one?
Yeah.
And then we would need how many?
Well, we
Just
have
kind of-
some, and it might be that some of them might need to just be moved to be more accessible to the public. So we have to do a bit of investigation around it. AED should be accessible to as many people as possible. So we want to make sure they're in the most accessible place. However, we may also want to have additional AEDs in work areas where the ice resurfacing room and one out front, we're not. So we should really look at that, because it's a big enough building that going from one to the other is a bit of a run. So once we formulate a plan, we would bring it back to council for approval.
Okay. Councillor Charney.
Well, we're finished discussing this one. I have another motion. Okay.
Okay.
When we finish this one.
So we're gonna finish this one. Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Charney.
I would like to put forward a motion that we start the implementation of the Oh, I thought we were going to do it here. Okay. Okay.
Okay. Moving on. 10, reports from council. Councillor Charney.
May 28th, went to the open house. There were a lot of people there, lots of information and enjoyed talking with different people. Enjoyed seeing what the different departments had on display. So I think it was well done. May 30th, I checked out some of the rally cars. Very interesting, talking to some of the folks that were down by the post office. Very enjoyable. May 31st, the Economic Development Day. I thought it was well presented and lots of information, and I thought it was a good session. We had the cow meeting on June 3rd. We walked around town and envisioned what we see for the downtown area in the future. June 6th, met with the U.S. Consul General James DeHart, and very interesting fact that his great grandfather or great, owned Robert Hack's house, built Robert Hack's house. And I think he was going to go see it. So it's nice to see that it's being refurbished from the flood and is probably still looking as good as it used to. So that's my report.
Councillor Richards.
Well, it seems like me and Wendy seem to hang out the same places. The open house, it was nice to see a lot of the people here, and especially with all the equipment on display from the fire hall, so that people could understand how the sprinklers work and how they set up and all the apparatus that we have, protection unit. The act development session that we had here was good information, so that was nice to have. The cow meeting was nice, good information. I attended one of the online SOGA meetings. We're working on next year's conference in Revelstoke. There's some other information that was being discussed about some of the updates for legislative reform. So there's probably some other information coming out to the membership soon. And yeah, the consulate visit on June 6th as well. So it was a busy couple weeks.
Councillor Baxter.
On May 28th, we went to the open house. I really enjoyed it. The community enjoyed it. They had lots of fun. And then the 29th, I went to the Stewie walk through the site meeting. It was really informative, and to see all the plants that are coming through, it's kind of nice, and the beavers. And then May 31st, I went to the economic development local workshop. It was very informative. Learned a lot about what they wanted to bring to the community. June 3rd, I did the downtown walk. June 4th, I did the Indigenous grad at the arena. It was really well done. It's beautiful. And June 9th, I went to the Stewie's meeting. We learned a lot about what's happening and what they want to see in the plant development and the animals they want to start attracting.
Councillor Owen.
Thank you. So it's always to be last, so that it's a good reminder to see what people did. So May 28th, open house. I have to say kudos to staff. So it was very well organized. I'm looking forward to the next one. May 31st, economic development workshop. Very informative. Many things to think about it. A lot of food for thought. There was a June 3rd cow meeting, the downtown walk. Many options. We have to have a clear vision of where we want to go so that we decide how we can get there. On June 4th, the Indigenous grad. So it was good. And today, you attended the Collecteville French Immersion celebration. So it was good to understand when the school started. If I'm not mistaken, it was in 1964, Alan. So it's been a while for a while. So thank you.
Okay, for myself, May 28th, I attended the open house at the Civic Center, and job well done by the city staff. Again, always doing a good job at these open houses. June 2nd, attended the open house at TMV, and Greg Gerard put on a presentation for us. So quite a few people attended that. June 23rd, attended the downtown revitalization tour. And lots of options, and thanks Ms. Brick for calling ambulance for a female that was down, and she was taken to the homeless shelter. So really good deed for the day. So that was really good to see. So I don't have gas, buddy. Sorry. And I don't have any rumors to squash. So that's what I did over the last couple of weeks. So okay. Moving on, information items. There were four. Oh, sorry, Councillor Baxter.
in our packages received the River Ranch Road one, which is separate from the Crawford. Yeah. And it's between the golf course. So I don't know. Yes, please.
Okay,
The River Ranch Road.
so we're gonna add the River Ranch report to 8.8, and we need a.
Do you want to send it to the next one?
I mean, I'll send it. Ultimately, it's it is an information item, so you can add it to the next one. There's no decision.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
It's just a understanding of how complicated that particular section is.
Okay.
Did you read it? 'Cause it's-
Yeah, it's
It's,
lots of pages. It's very informative. Well
Yeah.
detailed, Rick. Good job.
It's not on the agenda. Okay, or what?
We'll get it. It's one of the, it was in right behind it, going in front of their section.
It was not attached on the agenda. Right. Okay, 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 perfect.
Okay. Sorry, Rick.
Systems made by staff, and then we will have record for the next road still.
Yeah, it's like. The
Not in you.
paper version, it's so.
It's in the electronic version, it's probably just attached to the same document.
Where's it attached electronically?
Gordon and Crawford intersection.
I'm looking at it. I don't see it.
So. And then go down to that word. So 231026.
Page 122.
PDF version. It is.
In East Craig?
Twenty-two to 148.
So we have to go on the public site? Somewhere.
So thank you for catching that, Councilor Baxter, and we will have it in for the next session.
Well, when you read it 3 times, you know what's in there.
Yeah, it's not a priority.
Yes. And I feel like Wendy does when she gets.
Okay, moving on, information items, there were 4 of them. Any comments, questions on those? Adam, Councillor Etchart?
No, I was just thinking, like, I don't see where they're talking about the section. Well, yeah, I mean, it's hard.
It shows up on.
Hmm.
Okay, moving on. I just wanted to comment on the RCMP monthly report. Just a couple things that stood out. There were 23 mental health calls where citizens were apprehended under the Mental Health Act and taken to hospital. So 23 per month.
And I think it's very important to remember that a member likely is staying with those people until they're fully admitted to hospital. So that removes a member from active service for a potentially extended period of time, especially if there's a need to transport them to another hospital, right?
And there were 22 assaults in the month. And 43 targeted downtown patrols. So lots of patrols are actually being made by members. So I just wanted to comment on that. Okay, moving to a closed session. I need okay. Recommendation that this meeting be closed to the public pursuant to B, personal information about identifiable individual who is being considered for a municipal award or honor, or who has offered to provide a gift to the municipality on condition of anonymity, and C, labor relations or other employee relations. If the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality of the community charter. And I need a first and second. Councillor Charney, Councillor. Oh, sorry.
And
Ms.
you'd
Park-
like to add, am I correct that you'd like to add E, the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements if the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality?
Okay. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Okay. We're going to take 5 minutes.